Today, we're diving into 12 RPGs that aren't just hard, they're infamous. Games filled with punishing mechanics, endless grinds, and bosses that break your spirit. They're not about quick reflexes, but stamina, strategy, and sheer determination. The kind of RPGs that make even veterans question if it's worth going on. Think you have what it takes to actually finish them? Shin Megami Tensei 5 proves that modern RPGs can still be brutally unforgiving. Released on the Nintendo Switch in 2021, it continues Atlus's legendary series, known for pushing players to their absolute limits. From the very beginning, it makes one thing clear. This is not about casual exploration or easy grinding. Every battle can be deadly. Every mistake can cost hours of progress, and the game punishes carelessness without hesitation. The combat revolves around weaknesses, yours and the enemy's. If you strike a weakness, you gain extra actions. But if an enemy hits yours, the fight can spiral out of control instantly. Even random encounters can wipe your entire party if you're unprepared. Boss fights demand patience, precision, and multiple retries, forcing you to rethink strategies again and again. But this punishing design comes with depth. The world is filled with demons you can recruit, fuse, and command, turning team building into a complex puzzle. Each fusion choice and skill setup can mean the difference between survival and failure. On top of that, the story challenges you with philosophical themes about order, chaos, and the fate of humanity. For many players, Shin Megami Tensei 5 feels impossible. The grind is relentless, the bosses unforgiving, and the pressure constant. Yet for those who endure, it delivers one of the most intense and rewarding RPG experiences of the last decade.
Ruin has come to our family.
Darkest Dungeon is not just about hard battles, it's about breaking your will. Released in 2016 by Red Hook Studios, this RPG puts you in charge of a team of adventurers exploring cursed ruins, haunted forests, and endless dungeons. The twist? Stress and sanity are just as dangerous as monsters. Each expedition wears your heroes down, and too much stress triggers quirks like paranoia, selfishness, or despair. Sometimes they'll even refuse your commands, turning victory into sudden defeat. Combat is turn-based, but positioning is critical. Skills only work in specific rows, and one enemy shuffle can destroy your strategy. Add limited resources, torches, food, healing, and every fight feels like a gamble. Bosses make it worse. Battles against horrors like the Hag or the Heart of Darkness often feel less like fights and more like survival tests. The true cruelty comes with permadeath. When a hero dies, they're gone forever, along with the hours you invested. Progress feels fragile, victories bittersweet, and defeats devastating. Many players give up long before the end, overwhelmed by the grind, RNG, and psychological toll. Still, for those who endure, Darkest Dungeon delivers something unforgettable. An RPG where the greatest enemy is not the monsters, but the creeping sense of hopelessness. Few games capture despair so perfectly, and that's what makes finishing it feel almost impossible. Unlimited Saga is often remembered as one of Square Enix's boldest experiments, and also one of its most punishing. Released on the PlayStation 2 in 2002 in Japan, it was part of the long-running Saga series, known for breaking conventions. But this entry pushed things so far that many players gave up almost immediately. Instead of familiar RPG exploration, the game presents its world as a board game, with your characters moving across tiles that trigger traps, monsters, or treasures. What made Unlimited Saga nearly impossible for many players was its sheer complexity. Every system, from character growth to combat, is layered with mechanics that the game barely explains. Stats grow in strange ways, skills are tied to weapons and abilities that must be unlocked through obscure conditions, and even basic progression can feel like solving a puzzle. The combat system uses a real mechanic, similar to a slot machine where timing determines the success of attacks. Mastering it takes patience, precision, and a lot of trial and error. The game also features 7 different protagonists, each with their own storyline. That might sound exciting, but it adds to the overwhelming difficulty, since every campaign requires you to relearn strategies and face new challenges. Most players never finished even one path, let alone all 7. Unlimited Saga is divisive. Some consider it brilliant once you learn its systems, while most found it nearly unplayable. It's a game that demands dedication, guides, and experimentation just to survive. For many, it was an RPG that felt less like an adventure and more like a test of endurance. Before Dark Souls became a global phenomenon, there was Demon's Souls, the game that truly defined modern RPG difficulty. Released on PlayStation 3 in 2009, it was From Software's bold experiment in punishing design, one that few believed would succeed. Yet it became a cult classic, famous for turning frustration into triumph and showing that not every RPG had to hold your hand. From the start, Demon's Souls makes its intentions clear. Every enemy can kill you in seconds, traps are everywhere, and death is not the end. It's part of the cycle. When you die, you lose your collected souls, and retrieving them requires reaching the spot of your death without dying again. This constant tension makes every step forward feel risky, and every small victory incredibly rewarding. Bosses like the Tower Knight, Flame Lurker, and Old King Allant are designed to test patience and precision. Many of them require multiple attempts just to learn their patterns, let alone defeat them. The game also introduces a unique world tendency system, where dying repeatedly can make enemies harder and areas more dangerous. For new players, it feels like the game is actively working against you. Demon's Souls was never meant to be easy. It was built to be conquered through persistence, strategy, and learning from failure. While countless players gave up, those who endured discovered one of the most groundbreaking RPGs of its time. It set the stage for an entire subgenre of brutal, unforgettable challenges. Among all Fire Emblem games, Thracia 776 stands as the most infamous. Released in 1999 for the Super Famicom in Japan, it's legendary not because of flashy visuals or grand storytelling, but because of its sheer cruelty toward players. Even veterans of the series often admit they couldn't finish it. The game follows Leaf, a young lord caught in the chaos of Jugdrill's wars. But what makes Thracia so brutal is its mechanics. Enemy stats are high, your resources are scarce, and the game constantly throws impossible scenarios at you. Fatigue is one of its most punishing features. If you rely on the same units too much, they'll become exhausted and unusable in the next battle. This forces you to rotate characters, even when weaker recruits seem doomed to fail. The maps themselves are notorious. Fog of war is common, ambush reinforcements appear out of nowhere, and many chapters require you to escape with your army under extreme pressure. If you fail to protect civilians or complete objectives quickly, you can lose access to vital items or story events. On top of that, the capture system, where you can seize enemy weapons. Sounds helpful, but it puts your units at even greater risk. Thracia 776 doesn't forgive mistakes. Every move must be precise, every resource carefully managed, and even then, luck often decides whether you succeed. For many players, it's the hardest Fire Emblem ever created, a game designed to test patience, persistence, and strategy to the absolute limit. Monster Hunter Freedom Unite is often described as the ultimate test of patience and skill in an action RPG. Released on the PSP in 2008, it looks simple at first. Hunt monsters, gather materials, craft better weapons and armor. But behind that loop is one of the most punishing experiences you can imagine. There are no levels or experience points. Your strength comes entirely from the gear you craft and how well you master each monster's patterns. Every hunt is a marathon. Battles can stretch for nearly an hour, where a single mistake can cost everything. Monsters hit hard, move unpredictably, and punish greed. You prepare by bringing potions, traps, and whetstones to keep your blade sharp, but even then, survival is never guaranteed. And once you finally slay a monster, you may not even get the item you need. Some rare drops have single-digit drop rates, meaning dozens of repeat hunts just to craft one weapon. The game's sheer size makes finishing it nearly impossible. Hundreds of quests, dozens of monsters, and endless gear upgrades ensure that the grind never ends. For many, the difficulty spikes and repetition are too much to handle, and they quit long before seeing the final challenges. Yet, for those who endure, Freedom Unite delivers unmatched satisfaction. Taking down a colossal beast after countless failures feels like pure triumph. It's brutal, it's exhausting, and for many, it remains one of the hardest RPGs to ever truly complete.
The sinner shall be atoned.
Chaos Legion is one of Capcom's most overlooked action RPGs, yet also one of its most punishing. Released in 2003 on the PS2, it combines hack-and-slash combat with RPG progression, letting you summon legions, powerful creatures that fight at your side. On paper, it feels like Devil May Cry with tactical depth. In practice, it became infamous for overwhelming enemies, sharp difficulty spikes, and a grind that tested even veteran players. Missions are long and filled with waves of relentless foes. You must balance combos, manage stamina, and keep your legions alive, but they also need constant leveling through repetitive fights. Losing them mid-battle can turn an already brutal encounter into near certain defeat. Checkpoints are rare, and bosses hit with attacks that punish even small mistakes, forcing multiple retrees. The Gothic art style and cinematic presentation gave Chaos Legion a unique identity, but the game rarely explained its mechanics. Players were left to figure out complex systems on their own, often restarting missions again and again. Later stages became notorious for their difficulty, and many simply quit before reaching the finale. Though it never gained the fame of Capcom's bigger franchises, Chaos Legion is remembered by those who played it as one of the toughest RPG experiences on the PS2, a mix of stylish action and merciless design that made finishing it feel nearly impossible. Xenoblade Chronicles 10 is one of those RPGs that feels almost endless. Released in 2015 for the Nintendo Wii U, it throws you onto the alien planet of Mira, a world so massive that exploration itself becomes a challenge. Each continent is filled with enormous creatures, many strong enough to crush you in seconds, making every step into the unknown a gamble. From the very start, the game makes it clear, progress here is not easy, and survival depends on preparation and patience. Unlike most RPGs, Xenoblade 10 leans heavily on grinding and resource management. Missions often demand perfectly tuned builds, rare materials, and hours of farming before you stand a chance. Even unlocking Skells, the giant mechs that let you fly and fight monsters on equal terms, requires a long grind and a series of demanding quests. And once you finally get one, battles only grow tougher. The sheer number of quests is overwhelming. Story missions, affinity quests, and hundreds of side missions pile up, stretching the game into an experience that can consume hundreds of hours. For many players, the sheer weight of repetition and difficulty spikes made finishing the main story almost impossible. Yet for those who pushed through, Xenoblade Chronicles 10 delivered something unforgettable. Few RPGs match its sense of scale or the thrill of finally overcoming Mira's colossal monsters. It's a game remembered as both breathtaking and brutally exhausting, an RPG that tests not just your skill, but your endurance. Nioh 2 is one of the most relentless action RPGs ever made, and even veterans of the Souls genre often admit it broke them. Released for PS4 in 2020 and later on PC, it builds on the foundation of the first game, but dials everything up. Faster combat, more brutal enemies, and systems so deep that mastering them feels like learning a martial art. At first glance, it looks like just another Souls-like, but anyone who plays quickly realizes Nioh 2 is a beast of its own. The combat is lightning fast, with multiple stances, weapon types, and skills to master. Every fight is a test of reflexes, stamina management, and precision. Enemies hit brutally hard, and bosses are designed to punish hesitation. Yokai powers let you unleash devastating moves, but they also demand careful timing and resource control. Mistakes are not forgiven. A single wrong dodge or poorly timed attack can mean instant death. The sheer amount of content makes finishing the game feel impossible for many players. Dozens of bosses, endless loot grinding, and challenging post-game missions stretch the experience far beyond what most can endure. Even completing the main story requires persistence, but the optional content pushes difficulty to a level only the most determined can survive. For some, Nioh 2 is overwhelming. For others, it's one of the most rewarding action RPGs ever created. It's a game that demands mastery and refuses compromise, and that's exactly why so many never managed to finish it. Tale of the Forsaken Land is one of the most brutal dungeon crawlers ever released on the PS2. Inspired by the classic Wizardry series, it drops you into the sprawling city of Duhan, which has been struck by a mysterious disaster. From there, you descend into deadly labyrinths where every step can mean disaster. Unlike many RPGs of its time, Tale of the Forsaken Land doesn't hold your hand. Dungeons are dark, filled with traps, and enemies are relentless. The game introduces a trust system, where building bonds between party members is essential. But trust can break if characters fall or act against expectations, making battles even harder. Combat is turn-based but punishing, with enemies that can wipe your team in a few unlucky turns. Progress is slow, grinding is essential, and permadeath constantly lurks in the background. Many players gave up long before reaching the deeper floors of the labyrinths, overwhelmed by the difficulty and the sheer tension of resource management. For those who endured, however, the game offered one of the most atmospheric and rewarding dungeon crawling experiences on the PS2. It's a title remembered as both unforgiving and unforgettable, the kind of RPG that tests not only your strategy, but also your patience. At first glance, The Last Remnant looks like a dream RPG. Sweeping battles, cinematic visuals, and a story about mysterious artifacts that hold incredible power. But once you start playing, the reality sets in. This is one of Square Enix's most overwhelming and punishing RPGs. Released on Xbox 360 in 2008 and later on PC, it tried to mix large-scale strategy with turn-based combat, but its systems left many players completely lost. Instead of controlling one hero, you command entire squads called unions. Battles feel epic, with dozens of characters clashing at once, but behind the spectacle lies a system filled with hidden mechanics. Stats grow unpredictably, party composition can make or break fights, and the game explains almost nothing. Difficulty spikes are brutal, forcing players into long grinding sessions just to stand a chance. Bosses are infamous for dragging on, often lasting over an hour, with one mistake capable of wiping out your progress. For many players, it became less about role-playing and more about wrestling with numbers and randomness. Some never made it past the early chapters, and yet those who endured found something unique. The chaotic, large-scale battles could feel unlike anything else, creating a sense of scale rarely seen in RPGs. The Last Remnant is remembered as a bold experiment, one that fascinated a few, but pushed countless others to give up before the end. Before Demon's Souls, From Software was already experimenting with brutal RPG design, and Shadow Tower is one of the clearest examples. Released for the PS1 in 1998, it's a first-person dungeon crawler set in a cursed tower filled with grotesque monsters and deadly traps. What made Shadow Tower infamous was its cruelty. Weapons and armor break quickly, healing items are rare, and every mistake can push you closer to a game over. There are no flashy tutorials or hand-holding. Survival depends entirely on observation, resource management, and raw persistence. Enemies are tough, hit hard, and many areas feel intentionally designed to overwhelm unprepared players. The atmosphere is heavy, with dark, claustrophobic corridors and eerie sound design that keeps tension high. Progress is painfully slow, and many players gave up long before reaching the top of the tower. But for those who endured, Shadow Tower offered one of the most unique and haunting RPG experiences of its era. It's a true predecessor to the Souls formula, mysterious, punishing, and unforgettable. The kind of game you don't just play, but survive. And that brings us to the end of the list. 12 RPGs that test patience, skill, and pure endurance. Some are classics, others obscure experiments, but all of them brutal. These are the kinds of games most players never finish. But if you've managed to beat even one, you've earned bragging rights. Which of these would you dare to take on? Don't forget to subscribe for more hidden RPG challenges.